Hello and welcome to my kitchen again. This is Cookin with Kelly, and today I am here with my friend Mike Hose, and Mike is a certified lean health coach. He is also an ambassador. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but I'll let him tell you about this in a second. But he's an ambassador for Naturalistic Health Options, which is he does food sensitivity testing, hair mineral analysis, and I'm super excited. I did the food sensitivity testing and I got my results back, but we haven't gone over it. We're going to do that soon. He used to be a meat and potatoes guy. And he is slowly shifting to plant-based because Mike said he used to have high blood pressure, headaches, joint pain, fatigue, all of these different symptoms, and he felt like he needed to make a change. So he has worked on going more plant-based. So today our episode is going to be a plant-based episode. The other thing I want to say about Mike, he is the founder of Stand Up for All Kids, which is a nonprofit that helps kids get that health testing that I just mentioned and then make changes that are relative to each individual child. So I'll kind of let you talk a little bit more about that, Mike, because you know more than I do about you.
Yeah, so thanks for having me today, Kelly. It's awesome. I'm excited to make these waffles. So I was having a lot of health issues, and then I went through the testing, found answers, found out I had to give up dairy, found out I had some sensitivities to gluten. And then I just, started to make the changes and started feeling so much better. And I had a lot of people help me with options, and that's what I'm trying to do is just help other people with options. Stand Up for All Kids. Every year we take a portion of the money that we get from the health testing and any of the, food nutritional options that we share. We take a percent and we help kids every January get the free testing. And then usually those kids get like 4 Saturdays where they'll get some kind of like based on their tests. A lot of them have to give up dairy or gluten or dairy and gluten. They might have to give up eggs also. So I came up with a waffle mix that it seems like all the kids love, and it is dairy-free, gluten-free, and egg-free. So we're gonna make them up and see, so just show the ingredients, and then we're gonna make them, and then we'll try them out and see what you guys think. So I'm gonna be using Namaste gluten-free. It's a good mix that we found. It's we're gonna use 2 cups of that.
And where do you find this?
Okay, so I get this at Mustard Seed.
At Mustard Seed.
Yeah.
So do you think you would be able to find this in a normal grocery store, or what if somebody can't find it in a normal grocery store? What are they gonna get?
So I have seen this brand Namaste at Giant Eagle.
Okay.
So you just have to go and you have to ask them. There's a lot of different places that are carrying more gluten-free options. So you just really have to ask them. And there's other brands that you can find. There's lots of places that.
That's kind of what I figured. A lot of the grocery stores, because of demand, people are wanting to go more plant-based.
Yes.
I think they're finding that they need to carry these things. So it should be easier to find. If all else fails, I'm sure it's on Amazon, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure you can find it and order it and have it shipped to your house,
yes.
Right? A lot of people doing that. And I think with all the research and information coming out, there's the Game Changers on Netflix. It talks about a lot of athletes going to plant-based. When I changed, unbelievably how much better I felt. So I tell people my pain, my inflammation, my headaches, and my high blood pressure dropped all the way down to 117 over 76, which is better than it was ever. So there's proof. And the big thing is people just need to give it a try. And I think a lot of times, for me, it was overwhelming because I grew up as meat and potato kind of guy. So, just finding this as a simple solution for breakfast and other options and people helping with options is key. So the other thing we're going to use is some applesauce just to give it a little flavor, maybe a little natural sweetener. I like to use the non-GMO. So this is unsweetened non-GMO applesauce, just 1 package to make it simple.
Take that.
Make it really easy. A little bit of vanilla. So it says about a tablespoon. So I just kind of gauge it a little bit just to give it a little bit of flavor.
I love that you do that because I am such a non-measurer.
Yeah.
Just dump a little in.
Well, once you've made them, so I've been making these for about 5 years now, you kind of get a pretty good gauge of exactly what you're doing.
Right.
You might have to pop. So I brought some kind of fresh non-GMO honey too. Local. I try to get local, try to always do organic. So with that, Really, it's just gauging. I just literally put a little bit in there, and again, something more natural. Instead of adding like sugars and things like that, just going to add a little bit of honey. Honey has so many good health properties, antibacterial, things of that nature. And then we're going to add a little bit. Today I'm going to use almond milk. You can use different plant-based milks if you'd like. It's really up to you. 3/4 of a cup. There. And then for the egg substitute, I use this flax meal. So the ratio to use for like 2 eggs would be 2 tablespoons, which I've already pre-measured this out. So I've got perfectly 2 tablespoons of flax meal.
And flax also, I mean, it has some pretty good health properties.
Yes.
By itself. So what, it's got omega-3s,
Omegas, yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's a healthy fat.
Definitely. So that's just a substitute. So if somebody does the testing and they find out, and even vegans or you want to go plant-based, eggs are not okay. Right. And a lot of people are finding out that they have sensitivities to eggs. And then
aren't eggs one of the top 3? It's dairy, eggs, and I'm not sure, maybe like, I don't know what
So dairy is the most common that I've seen
right.
in 8 years that I've been seeing the testing. Gluten is the second most common. Eggs is the third, and then it's across the board. It could be something like fish, it could be beef, it could be chicken.
Nuts.
Yes, nuts too. It could be, even bananas. So like say somebody was to give up bananas and then they eat a banana 3 weeks after not eating it, they would get nauseous maybe or dizzy or sick or fatigued.
Right.
Maybe even cause congestion or stomach issues. So, and then with the 2 tablespoons of flax, I'm going to use 6 tablespoons of water.
Okay, that's good to know.
Kind of the mixture for the eggs. And I like to use alkaline water. That might be another episode of talking about pH and everything.
Oh my gosh, yes. I don't know if we need to overwhelm people. That opens up a whole other can of worms.
I can definitely have a whole show on pH and different foods and all that stuff. All right, so then a little bit of cinnamon. So you okay with cinnamon?
Yes, I am fine with cinnamon.
Okay, so if you don't like cinnamon, you don't have to add it. I just like it for flavoring, plus cinnamon is just, you can Google all the health properties of cinnamon.
I know for sure one of the health properties of cinnamon is that it can help you control blood glucose. So for people who have blood sugar issues, type 2 diabetics, cinnamon is actually a really good spice to have in your cabinet.
Okay, and then this is something just because, I'm really active. I do a lot of fitness, CrossFit, things of that nature. I always try to add a little protein in there, a little extra. I think it's hard. A lot of people think it's hard to get the extra protein when you give up meat, but really, I have a chart of where you can find plant-based protein, and I really like this one. It's NSF certified, no pesticides, no herbicides, and I've been on it for 6 years now, and it's all plant-based, 100%. So I'm just going to add that in there just to give us a little bit.
Do you find that, do you get a lot of questions from people about like when they're starting to go plant-based or vegan, like about the protein? Because I know that I'm not vegan. I'm working personally on going more plant-based too, and I'm feeling pretty good doing it. But one of the most common concerns is the whole, like, am I going to get enough protein? So
right.
Do you find that too?
Yeah, a lot of people, that's probably one of the biggest concerns is that, they're wondering where they're going to get their protein from. And then that's usually where I help them out. I have a chart that I usually send them, with different proteins per, maybe soy. It could be peanuts, unless somebody has a peanut allergy. There's a lot of nuts that we get protein from, and beans, so like, chili. You don't have to add meat to it, just maybe add a little bit more beans.
Right. There are definitely really great ways to get protein, plant-based. All right, so you're just adding a little bit more?
Yeah, it just depends. Yep.
Okay.
It's like, I like a certain consistency, so it gets real close, so I'm just going to add a little bit more just to get it a little bit to where I want it. And then I use this vegan plant-based butter, which it's dairy free, and I use it just to put on the actual waffle iron just to try to keep them from sticking, because let's face it, you got honey, you got applesauce, stuff like that. So I found this, I like it. And most people that try it, they seem to like it. Now all we gotta do is I'm gonna go ahead and make up a waffle just to show everybody how easy it is, because even
check out his waffle maker.
So a lot of times when I take people their test results, right, and they find out they have to give up dairy or if they have to give up gluten or something, they're not always happy, right? So sometimes I feel like the Grinch, especially when I work with the kids. So I try to lighten up the mood, I guess, a little bit, because once the kids, I've worked with quite a few kids, and after they have changed and they've done it, they don't like it at first. Hardly anybody does, even adults. But once they actually do the change, and then they start to feel better, like 3-4 weeks maybe.
Yes.
Then you kind of sometimes will have a tendency that you might want to go back, and I like to say, test the waters. Can I really have dairy again? And then usually the next day I'm like, no, I can't have dairy.
I love that you have incorporated, along with the testing, helping them see that there are alternatives, because once you hand people those test results and they find out that they are, either have a food sensitivity or an allergy to something like dairy or wheat, and it's like these things are in everything, to have somebody say, like, look, you can still have pancakes, we're just going to make them a little different. I think that's a really important key for helping people move forward once they learn that, these foods, and of course, yes, when they experience the feeling better, that's big, but you got to get them over that initial hump of like, we can do this.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's the biggest thing, like you're talking about ingredients. So you go into the stores and you start looking at the ingredients, and everything has dairy, wheat, eggs typically. So there are options out there. And one of the biggest things that I do as a lean health coach, and that stands for lifestyle, exercise, attitude, nutrition. So with nutrition, I've done a class where I taught the kids to how to read the labels. So that's one thing Dr. Sears does. I have a little thing where I can go teach the kids how to read the labels so they understand the added sugars, the hidden ingredients, things like that. But just swapping out things. So that's the biggest thing, is a lot of people, like, I didn't know when I first changed, and I've been learning for the last 8 years, and a lot of people help and support. But if I can't do eggs, then what can I do as an egg substitute? I'm still getting the omegas and still getting some of the protein and stuff from it. Well, then you can just do that.
Right.
And a lot of people were like, well, is it going to taste good? So then we do these little taste sample things. And we did one at the local grocery store. They let us have it come in, and people just came through and they tried them for free.
That's
just
awesome.
To make awareness. We're mainly trying, a lot of the nonprofit stuff, we're trying to make awareness just to help other people about the testing, the options. And then once they get the results, they can try some of these waffles, or we have lots of other things that we can do, especially since it's October now, right? Chili is a big thing, crock pots and stuff like that. We could share maybe at some point something like that, a plant-based crock pot type meals.
I think we're going to do some more plant-based episodes, so I think that'll be a really good thing.
Yeah, I think obviously you're on Facebook, I'm on Facebook, we're both on Instagram, we're sharing lots of stuff. I constantly share things whenever I make something, because there's so many people that are learning, that they need to give up some, especially like dairy or gluten, it's big issues, and things like eggs. So we're just about to the point, I think we'll be ready. But
how do you know with your
so
thing
with mine,
it's ready?
I got a light on here.
Oh, well, that's perfect.
And it's, when it turns off, it's done.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy. Yeah. And then I've got the maple syrup here, as you can see. I just always look for this non-GMO label. And basically that means it was certified to be non-genetically modified. It's organic, it's natural. There's a lot of scientists out there. There's a good documentary called Genetic Roulette, where they dig into where we genetically modified a lot of the plants and foods that we eat. And they were doing it to try to be able to get more yield, right? And they were putting these pesticides on there to keep the pests from eating it. But now they're finding that DNA structure of the plants might be altered to where a lot of us aren't recognizing it, and it kind of makes sense. So I do better if I go non-GMO, organic, and clean type options.
When you can.
Yeah. So let's see how this goes. Sometimes the first one is a little tricky.
Oh, yep, always. Like, it's like the first pancake in the pan. It always comes out looking a little weird.
And then the second
That's
one,
always the one I get to eat.
the second one is usually golden.
Oh, that looks pretty good though.
Yeah. Get it to cooperate.
I'm excited because
Okay.
I am still fasted today, so I'm into intermittent fasting, and you're.
Me too. I haven't
I
had
know.
anything.
He's in my online intermittent fasting course right now, so.
So we're gonna break our fast
We
with
are about
some
to.
gluten-free, dairy-free
When
waffles.
you and this is so funny, like people with intermittent fasting, they're always like, well, I like breakfast, it's my favorite meal of the day. And it's like, well, that doesn't mean you can't eat breakfast foods. Like, you're just shifting your breakfast foods to a little later.
Yeah, and it's definitely something you have to get used to, like new habits, right?
Yes.
I mean, even going plant-based, it's a new habit.
Yes.
And now that I've been doing it for so many years, I'm used to it. I know where to go in the grocery store, you know, where to find the things.
Yes.
And I even, sometimes if I have time on a Saturday and there's somebody, I'll take a family and I'll take them to the store and I'll go through with them like in 15 minutes and show them all the spots that I go to.
Right. All right, well, that one's cooking. Maybe we should try
Go ahead and
these,
try
huh?
this and sample it. You like syrup?
Yeah.
Who doesn't like syrup? What was that movie? Elf? He put syrup on everything?
That's right. Give me a plate of pasta and some syrup.
Yeah. All right, so just go ahead and grab a little square.
All right.
Soak up some of that syrup and give it a try.
All right.
Take a
Cheers,
bite.
cheers, cheers.
Take a bite and see what you think.
Oh my God. Like, got that crunch on the outside. Wow.
Isn't it good?
See, no,
So-
I would eat this over a regular pancake any day of the week.
Almost everybody that tries them
Mm.
absolutely says, I
Mhm.
like these better than regular pancakes.
So good. All right. All right, so I'm going to let you finish up your batter, and
Yeah.
then we are going to get prepped and set up because I am also going to cook a plant-based recipe using tofu, because I know when it comes to plant-based and vegan, people are like, I see that tofu and it smells a little funny and it looks a little funny. So, and it's a little scary to use. So I'm going to make a recipe utilizing tofu.
Well, being a guy, I'm like, tofu? Really?
I know, right?
Now I actually ate it. It's not, you know what I mean? It's like this conception we have until you really try things. So,
Right.
Well, thanks a lot for having me.
Hey, no problem. Well, you're still going to
Excited.
be here
Yeah,
for the tofu.
I'm excited to see what you're going to make next. So.
From high school sports to community events and beyond, you can find all of your favorite local shows on the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel.
Hi, I'm Kristen Gambasini from Craft Table. You can check out my show as well as other local favorites such as Medina Minute, Cooking with Kelly, and Leisure and Literature on Armstrong Neighborhood Channel.
Check us out right now on Channel 100 or search Armstrong Neighborhood Channel on YouTube for playlists and much more. Spirit, town pride, community. This is the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel.
All right, so we've had breakfast. Thank you, Mike, for
Yep.
those. I mean, those the waffles were just amazing. I would take those over normal waffles any day of the week.
Awesome.
Nice and crunchy. So anyway, now I am going to do a recipe that involves tofu. So I know a lot of people who are going plant-based or vegan or thinking about it. They're like, where am I going to get my protein? Or what am I even going to eat if we're not cooking with meat? What is going to be the base? Because in the United States, for a lot of us, the base thing in our meals is meat.
Right.
So what do you replace meat with? Well, a lot of times you're just going to eat a lot more vegetables, which if you're going plant-based, eating more vegetables, that's what's really going to help you feel better and be more healthy. But if you're looking for something that sort of replaces the meat and is a little bit more of a base, things like tempeh and tofu are great options. And yes, when you first start working with tofu, it's a little weird. Like the first time I used tofu, I was like, man, it looks a little odd. It smells a little odd. What do I even do with this? So today I am going to make a recipe that I would traditionally make with ground beef. I'm just going to replace the ground beef with tofu, and I'm going to add quite a few vegetables to give it a little bit of crunch. I'm going to give you some other options for changing it up. So without further ado, we're going to start working with the tofu. So I've never worked with the soft varieties of tofu. I always get the extra firm tofu. And so it usually comes in a package just like this.
And see, that's like helpful hints, like little hints that you can have to do it. Because for me, tofu, I was always like, tofu, really? I'm going to go with the meat. But now it's actually good once you actually try it.
Yes, and when I've cooked tofu for other people, just like with your plant-based waffles, a lot of times people are really skeptical, but then they try it and they're like, wow, that's actually really good.
Right.
And so here's the thing about tofu. It actually, if you eat it just like this, not harmful at all, but if you eat it just like this, it doesn't have much taste. So it actually takes on the flavors of whatever you cook it with. So the spices and things that you're cooking with take on extra importance. And what I'm going to be cooking today is Korean tofu tacos. So it actually happens to be Tuesday today, so it's Taco Tuesday. We're going to do a little bit of a change up on the traditional taco. So
awesome.
One of the most important things I've found working with tofu doesn't matter so much in this recipe because we're going to crumble it up, but is if you were to slice the tofu and maybe marinate it and just grill it, which you can do, or pan fry it or put it in the oven, you need to get some of the water out of it. So what a lot of people will do is they'll kind of put it in a paper towel and then they'll set something on it heavy and they'll let the water soak out for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Again, I might just kind of push down on the tofu, get some of the water out of it, but because I'm actually going to be crumbling this tofu, it doesn't matter quite as much, and any liquid that comes out will be able to cook off. All right.
Yeah, you can actually see the paper towel getting
It
wet.
is getting,
Yeah.
Yep, it is getting kind of
I would
wet.
have never known to do that.
Well, I mean, until I started looking up recipes, like what do I do with this? I wouldn't have known that either, but it's just one of those tips that's helpful, again, especially if you're going to try and like just cook it, slice it and throw it on the grill after you marinate it some. All right, I'm going to throw that in there. And then I am just going to kind of start crumbling this. And Mike, if you wouldn't mind, could you grab me a bowl? Should be up in there, even if it's just like a pull. Yeah, there you go. And yeah, the red.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
And you can see with this firm tofu, it's crumbling really nicely. So it's really going to give you the consistency of ground beef. And you can just do this by hand. You can probably use a knife to do this too. But it's going to give you the consistency of ground beef, which I don't ever recommend trying to trick people. I mean, sometimes you might not tell somebody what it is.
Well, a lot of times you tell somebody they're going to have taco tofu instead of beef, they're going to automatically have this perception.
Yes.
And they're going to think that it's not going to taste good. And that was me. When somebody say, oh, you want some tofu, I'd be like, my face would be like, what? And then when you actually try it and somebody makes it and they know what they're doing, it's actually good.
It's funny how if you have a preconceived notion, and I tell my daughter this all the time, if you think, like if you have that thought in your mind that something's just going to be awful, chances are it's going to be awful.
Right. Because
you're already thinking that it's going to be. So anytime you try new foods, you have to have a little bit of an open mind. And I like to call myself a food adventurer. I'll try anything, and I actually get excited about trying interesting or weird or new stuff. And I think because I have that mindset, I tend to like things more the first time I try them. It's a mindset thing sometimes.
Well, I like where they do some of those taste samples, like with the NFL football players, and they actually they don't tell them. They just make 3 burritos, and they don't know if they're eating meat.
Is that in that
Game changers.
Yes.
Yeah. And the guys, they didn't know it, so he's like, well, we actually like the plant-based better. But if you know that it's plant-based, you're probably automatically thinking that I really like burritos, I like meat. So sometimes it's better for people not to know, you know?
I think so too. And I have hidden the tofu in like soups and stuff in my family, and mostly soups. And I've even hidden the tofu in dishes like this where there's meat, and nobody ever knows the difference. So, okay, so I crumbled my tofu. I'm gonna set that aside for a minute. I'm not gonna put anything on the heat yet until I've got everything kind of ready and prepped to go. So what I'm also gonna need is about a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And this recipe, the original recipe actually calls for brown sugar, but rather than brown sugar, I'm gonna use pure maple syrup. You could also use honey. When it comes to sweeteners, I try and go as unprocessed as possible. It's still sugar. So you have to be careful with how much you use, but at the same time, we want something with a little bit more health properties. So we're gonna use pure maple syrup today instead of brown sugar. And I usually use a little bit less than the recipe calls for. We're gonna use sesame oil, and that's what's gonna be our cooking oil. And I recommend getting toasted sesame oil because it's just gonna give it more of that umami flavor. Crushed red pepper if you like a little bit of spice. You can omit this if you don't love spice. I am going to use fresh ginger. And for those of you, I'll prep this in just a second, but you can use the powdered ground ginger if you don't have any of the fresh stuff, or if you just want to make it easier. And believe me, sometimes it is easier, because when I get to trying to cut the skin off of this thing, it's a little bit of a pain. We're gonna put garlic in, and we've got green onions for garnish. I'm also gonna add a couple of things to this recipe that are not in the original recipe. So here I have riced cauliflower. Yes, you could do this yourself. It's a whole lot easier to buy it pre-riced. So this is cauliflower.
Is that what they use to make the pizza crust too?
I don't know if they use
pizza?
the rice, but yes, they use cauliflower.
Okay.
I've tried to make pizza crust with cauliflower. Just doesn't turn out very well for me. So I stopped trying.
Lots of things you can do with it though.
There really is. I use this riced cauliflower all the time to add crunch to salads. What I'm gonna do with it today is, after the tofu's cooking a little bit, I'm gonna add maybe a 1/4 of this bag. And again, it's just gonna add a little bit of crunch. Some people don't like that. If you don't like to add crunch to your taco meat or whatever, don't add it. I also have pre-cooked quinoa. So you could, I also have regular quinoa that I would have to cook, but sometimes, again, it's so hard for people to make the switch to cooking at home. Sometimes it is just easier to buy stuff, to make life a little bit easier. So rather than cooking your own quinoa like you would rice, they do make the pre-cooked stuff. So I'm gonna throw in a little bit of this too, just for added texture, a little bit of added protein, some added fiber. And then I have Napa cabbage. Ooh. Thanks. I have Napa cabbage leaves, which is what we're gonna use for our tacos. You could also put this in traditional taco shells. All right, and then we'll talk about this other stuff later, because that's not part of the original recipe, but it is a potential change it up or an add-on. So I'm gonna prep some of these, the other ingredients. I don't have a whole lot of prep going on here. So this is a ginger root. Ginger has a lot of health properties too.
Yeah, really good for like migraines. If you have headaches, stuff like that, ginger's really good. Good for that GI system. If you have an upset stomach, a lot of times people will drink ginger ale. Better to just get the ginger though.
I would say, yeah.
Or if you're gonna get ginger ale, you want to look and see, because some of them, have high fructose corn syrup or things like that. So there are organic options out there though. But yeah, I definitely do more ginger in my diet.
I do too, and I use it as a digestive, or it really helps with digestion. So if you struggle with things like acid reflux, or it seems like you get bloated after meals, ginger is something that can really help. Ginger teas, or adding ginger to your recipes. It does have a strong flavor, So you have to be a little bit careful with what you add it to. All right, so now I'm going to use a grater. I have found using a grater or a zester to be the easiest way to get the ginger. And I wasn't perfect about cutting off the skin. I don't feel like you have to be perfect here.
Well, it's even like with lemons, right? The zest of the lemon, the peels, where you get a lot of the
Yes.
nutrients, and even with apples. And
Yes, and it's interesting to note because the skins of things, that's where the plant was exposed to the elements. So the plant has to be tougher in the skin, and that is where a lot of the vitamins and minerals tend to be sequestered, because the antioxidants tend to be sequestered in the skin, because that's where the plant had to undergo that environmental stress. All right, kind of look, I bet that's probably enough with the fresh. I do have to say that using fresh ginger in a dish like this does make a difference in the flavor. I feel like fresh ginger is much better than the dried, but most of the time for this recipe, I do use powdered, the dried ginger, just because it's so much easier than having to do this extra step of...
yeah, everybody's busy lifestyles, right?
That's right.
And sometimes if you can find things already prepped, it's helpful.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's one of those things where most people are struggling to cook dinner at all, let alone go plant-based and have to, you know?
Yeah.
So...
Garlic.
anything
Garlic
that
is one of my favorite. It's just funny. I've never used to eat garlic. I steered clear
Really?
of... Yeah. Yeah. So
Why?
my dad always figured he had a issue with onions and garlic, right? So then I thought I would probably have issues with it. But garlic has been one of the things that I have turned to really manage my blood pressure. It's been shown to help lower cholesterol. Loaded with vitamin Bs. It has that allicin in there, which has compounds like sulfur compounds that's been known to be antiviral, which, right, NAC, all that stuff, foods that have NAC, is antiviral and helps respiration. So
That's right. Garlic is a big
I eat garlic probably every day.
Yes, and when a recipe calls for 1 clove of garlic, that really means like 3 cloves of garlic, right? So we're keeping the vampires away. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same thing with the garlic. You could use a garlic press. You could just chop your garlic. It's totally up to you. You could also use powdered garlic in a pinch if you need it to be really easy. But I do like to grate the garlic. And if you wouldn't mind, Mike, can you grab me another bowl?
Yeah.
Thank you. Because what we're gonna do is once we get the tofu, thank you, yep, that's perfect. Once we get the tofu in the pan and starting to heat up and cook a little bit, I am gonna just I'm gonna put all of the spices along with the maple syrup and the soy sauce. We're gonna put it all in one bowl. We're gonna mix it up. And then when the tofu is ready, and once we get the tofu and the cauliflower and the quinoa in the pan, we'll dump the spices and the seasonings right on. And that'll be that. All right, good amount of garlic here.
So like even like a sore throat, right, or strep throat, they would take honey, a little cayenne pepper, and then garlic like that, and on a spoon, and just take it like as an antibacterial,
right,
to help fight against it.
Oh, thank you. All right, so I am going to put this right in there. And I'm gonna wash my hands one more time.
It's already smelling good.
I know, you can smell the garlic and the
Yep.
ginger. It does smell really good. All right, and now I'm going to, let's see here. We're gonna heat the oil on the stove first. Okay. And then, like a kamikaze in the kitchen. All right. All right, so we are going to let this oil heat up. And then we're gonna put the quinoa, not the quinoa, we're gonna put the tofu in. Let's see here. So have you cooked much with tofu?
No,
No?
not at all. The only
Not at
time I've
all,
ever had,
really?
yeah, the only time I've really had tofu was when I had it and it was already in a dish,
Okay.
like in a soup or something like that.
Now, do people ever come up with like a soy allergy or a sensitivity to soy?
Very rare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm impatient when it comes to,
Yeah, you get the pan a little warm.
I know, we need to get the pan warm.
Can I help chop up something or anything? Can I?
Yeah, actually, if
Do you want me to
you want to, you know what, we're gonna leave, we don't need this in,
Okay.
but if you want to kind of prep these and get them
Okay.
out, I don't think we really need to chop those because we're gonna use those as but maybe cutting the ends off
Oh, they're gonna
of
be
them.
the wraps.
Right, it's
Oh,
gonna be the
awesome.
wrap, yes.
Awesome.
It's gonna be the wrap. But honestly, almost everything is pretty much prepped. This is a really simple dish to make.
I thought you might be cutting this up to, go into tacos, but yeah,
Nope.
I love wraps.
Yep. All right, I'm always like, I'm so impatient with things heating up. It probably should be a little hotter, but I'm just gonna go ahead and dump our tofu in. All right. I might have you mix a little bit here in a minute.
Okay.
So I'm gonna let the tofu heat up for a second. Kind of get the oil moved around in the pan, and you can smell the toasted sesame. All right.
Now, what kind of onions are those?
Those are green onions.
Green onions. Okay.
Yep. And that's just really, that's more for garnish. I'm actually not going to add any of the green onions in. But some people, when it comes to like the Korean barbecue, they like to top the taco with a little bit of green onion.
Okay.
All right, so I am going to go ahead and throw I don't use this whole thing of quinoa, but I'm going to throw some quinoa in.
So the first time I ever had quinoa, I think it was 2013. I didn't even know, never heard of quinoa. And the guy I was working with, he was kind of, more of a more plant-based, and he was getting me to try it. And then I looked it up. I always research stuff, and I looked up quinoa, and it said something about, I think it's grown in the Andes Mountains or something like that, in a rare area. And it was the Egyptians were like some of the first to be found to actually eat the quinoa. They found that it gave them more energy for like building the pyramids and stuff like that. So,
right.
And for anybody that needs to give up, gluten or something, the quinoa is a good alternative.
It is. So quinoa is a whole grain. Is it considered a grain or is it considered a seed?
I believe it's a grain.
Okay.
As far as I know, but I'm not 100% sure. I just know it's a good alternative for most people, especially with the testing. If they have to give up gluten or something like that, you can still get, some substance with the quinoa.
Well, and I love the quinoa because I use quinoa all the time as a substitute for rice. So any dish that I would normally have rice with, I'll use quinoa because the nutrient profile on quinoa is so much better. It's got a bunch of fiber. It has a pretty high protein content.
And a lot of the pastas that I get are made out of quinoa.
Are they really? I've never tried one of the quinoa pastas.
They're good.
Awesome. Okay, so I might have you kind of hang here and keep this cooking, but I'm actually going to take these back over here.
Okay.
And then I'm going to make the sauce. So I'm going to throw the rest of this oil in here with it. All right, and then again, I do have some measurements here. So it's roughly a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And remember, I already have my ginger and my garlic in here. Roughly a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And roughly a 1/4 cup of your maple syrup, brown sugar, or honey. Again, I tend to go a little bit lighter on the sweeteners because you don't need a whole lot.
So don't be like Elf.
Right. Don't be like Elf with the sweeteners. When I added quite a bit of the crushed red pepper. That's going to add some spice. So if you don't like spice, you might want to omit that ingredient. All right, and I think, let's see here, we got ginger, garlic. This recipe also calls for sesame seeds. I didn't have any sesame seeds, so we're just going to omit that ingredient. I am going to mix this up just a little bit, and then we're gonna dump this right over the top. Okay. If you want to add a little bit of zing to this, you could probably also add a little bit of lime juice, but I don't have that today, so I'm going to take this right over here, and I'm going to dump it in here with our quinoa and all that fun stuff.
Just keep stirring it all in?
Yeah. I'll let you keep stirring that for a second. So he is going to stir that in. I'm going to add just a little bit more soy sauce. All right, and he's stirring that up. So we're gonna let it cook so that any moisture that's sort of coming out right now, any moisture that's coming out, we're gonna let it cook off a little bit. So I'm actually gonna turn up the heat. And while he's stirring, I am going to cut up a few green onions here.
Man, it's smelling really good.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And so it really, depending on what you cook it with, it really doesn't look a whole lot different than using ground turkey, ground chicken, ground beef.
See, and I think the key is when you mix it with all this stuff, right? I mean, as a guy, I would have probably just taken that tofu out and I just cut a chunk off and not knowing how to make it.
Yeah, and if you just eat straight up tofu, I mean, you're probably going to be like, oh, this is terrible. All right.
And I shouldn't say being a guy because there's so many guys that are really good cooks out there. I guess just being me,
well,
right?
It's
and
true.
not being exposed to how to make certain foods.
That's true.
It's the key is knowing how to prepare it.
I would agree. But, I do say that in the course of my coaching career, men have been tougher to work with when it comes to dietary change than women. So, when you keep saying, as a guy, I mean, like, I kind of get that.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a little bit of green onion as a garnish here. So, again, making this recipe easier, I mean, this is a very easy recipe to do, but you could use just the dried ground ginger. Just like I did today, I used the pre-cooked quinoa. So there are easy ways to make it easier if you're really in a time crunch. But I made this, even talking and trying to, manage the kitchen here, I did this in probably 15 or 20 minutes. So pretty simple. If you want to change it up, I've done the same thing with tofu and made it into a traditional taco night. So instead of using the Asian seasonings or the Korean seasonings, you use Mexican seasonings. Another thing you could do, which I'm not adding it today because some people have peanut allergies or peanut sensitivities, but you could use PB2 or you could add peanut butter to this Korean and you'll make it a little bit more like a peanut sauce. So, and that's also really tasty, but I decided not to do that today because I wasn't sure about Mike's sensitivities. So I wanted to make sure that we were keeping everybody safe. And then for this particular dish, I always like to top it with a little bit of sriracha. So let's go ahead and plate some of this up. All right, I think this is done. It seems like it's pretty dry, so pretty much any liquid that was there cooked off. So we're gonna move this right over here. And I have bottle of sriracha, a little bit of cut up green onion to add this as garnish. And we're just gonna take these Napa cabbage leaves and I might just break off the edge of mine.
Okay.
Just because it seems a little thick. And we're gonna keep these. I have rabbits, so the rabbits will eat these. And I might grab another one too. You could use, you know, the traditional lettuce too, you know, like the, what am I thinking of? The iceberg. You could use iceberg for this too. I feel like the Napa cabbage maybe has a little bit more like fiber in it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So maybe a slightly better nutrient profile, but some people aren't into the cabbage so much. So we're just gonna
make little tacos here.
Yep,
huh?
we're gonna make little tacos.
Awesome.
All right, you next. I'm gonna
Okay.
put,
You're gonna use some of that.
I am gonna use
spice
a little
it up a little
sriracha.
bit. All right.
It might be spicy enough. I might have put, like, I wasn't paying much attention when I was like shaking the the pepper flakes in there.
Yeah. So it actually really kind of looks like a taco.
It looks like a taco. It looks like we used ground turkey or ground chicken.
Yeah.
So honestly, most people aren't going to notice the difference. And let's see here. Is this going to open for me? Maybe, maybe not. You got it?
There you go.
All right. Okay, yeah. So give me a little squirt too when you're done. Hopefully you like spice.
I do.
Good.
You good?
All right, are we ready?
I think we're ready.
All right, you ready for tofu?
So tofu taco Tuesday,
Tofu
huh?
tacos.
All right.
And these are Korean recipe tacos. What do you think?
It's excellent.
Good. All right.
I don't even know that anybody would notice that it's not like chicken or something.
Right. I mean, you know, it's a little bit different texture than meat, but really it's not that far off. And the taste, it tastes like the Korean barbecue.
Need this in a recipe form.
I can absolutely
definitely
provide
be
that.
making
So simple. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are definitely going to be doing more of these plant-based episodes. If you want to get in touch with me, you can message me at kellybailey1980@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, kellybailey.fit. And Mike, how can people reach you if they want to get you?
So if you want to follow me on Facebook, you can follow Mike Hose. I also have Naturalistic Health Options where I share some stuff, but the best way to contact me would be naturalistichealthoptions@gmail.com. You can shoot me an email. My website is www.naturalistichealthoptions.com. You can go on there and take a look at the testing and stuff. So I think that's the biggest thing is a lot of people are learning they have to give up certain foods. And I think it's great that we're all sharing different options because I would have never made this as a dish, and it's amazing. So.
All right. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.